Welcome back. This is the Walter and Jack segment, and we're going to just be talking for a few minutes about, I guess, some things you can keep your eyes on as they pan out over the next little while. I want to start with the Alberta government, Rachel Notley, and her great, it's being portrayed as great, greenhouse gas reduction plan and everything for climate change. When the corporate media starts telling me that story, I think we all have to be a little bit suspicious. They've done that to us before. They brought in an NDP government. It happened here in 1991. And the NDP government in 1991 brought in the best logging plans in the world. But I was involved in the issues, and really nothing much changed. We were destroying our forests prior to the NDP coming in, and we were destroying them for many, and still are, after they came in. The rules and laws did not change. So now Rachel Notley, NDP, Alberta, they're solving the problem, moving ahead, carbon taxes, but can any of it be believed? I don't know.
Well, it's quite complex because you could think, well, you have the NDP and that should be progressive and, you know, the standard narrative. But if you dig in a little bit, you realize that the NDP has very closely collaborated with the corporate sector for a number of years, and particularly with the public relations side of the thing. And, you know, so you'd really wonder about what really went on in Alberta and how Alison Redford was run out of town on a rail.
Run out of town by the media, destroyed.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the Conservative governments poisoned half the province and gave away all the money. There was never a word of criticism about any of that.
But Alison Redford was sort of like an NDP. She was, so the Conservatives sort of had an NDP premier, but they still had their regular crowd of MLAs, so that wasn't going to work. And I think they realized they needed to have a real NDP government, one that would collaborate fully with the corporate sector, and without any grumblings and stuff by these radical right-wing MLAs. And through a process of a year or so, they brought in Jim Prentice, the Conservative leader that really didn't want to be the leader and didn't really want to be the premier. And then the election happened, and now Rachel Notley's in there doing the job.
So I think everybody should really just keep an eye on what happens, what really happens with climate change issues and greenhouse gas issues in Canada over the next few months. We're being told a story. I really hope it's true. I hope we are doing something great, because God knows we have to. But we have to make sure that the good news is actually happening. You wanted to talk a little bit about the case of the RCMP bombing of the legislature, I guess it's 2.5 years ago now, on Canada Day.
Yeah. Well, I believe his name is John Nuttall and Amanda Corody. They were a couple that were living in a basement suite in Vancouver. They were certified patients under psychiatric care. They were severely addicted to heroin, and they became involved in a plot to bomb the legislature. And the thing about that whole story is that it's so incredible from the start that anybody that's inquisitive would go, well, how did that happen? You know, you basically have two very unstable, mentally unstable people getting involved in this plot. Now, I just clipped this from the paper last week.
So it says RCMP may have acted illegally, says judge. And basically the trial is back on, and the judge is looking at the issue of, were they entrapped by CSIS and the RCMP?
That's right. The 242 officers that worked on this entrapment case, 242 operatives of CSIS and the RCMP. I just want to read a paragraph or two here of what the RCMP and CSIS did in order to enable this parent attempt to bomb the legislature. It says here, over the course of the investigation, undercover officers posing as jihadi warriors gave Nuttall and Corody groceries, cigarettes, bus passes, cell phones, phone cards, clothing, cash, and a portable hard drive. They also provided the pair with a place to work on their terrorist scheme and a location to build the explosive. They chauffeured them to various stores to purchase bomb-making equipment and transported them to and from Victoria and around the Lower Mainland over the course of the 4-month-long sting operation.
And it's also worth mentioning that they were afraid that they would be killed if they didn't plant the bombs.
And they testified to that in court. And I think you also brought in a letter to the editor that was a response to this article.
Yeah, so to me, the entire case is a fraud. Canada should be ashamed of what was done to those two people. The people at the top of the RCMP should resign. Harper should be held accountable, because this was, to me, this was entrapment. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but from what I've read about this thing, it never would have happened in a million years without the RCMP making it happen. And yet, a few days later, after this story, the TC prints a letter to the editor which says, now the police are being made to look like the bad guys, and the lawyers are dragging it out because they're getting paid. And then it goes on to say, if it takes entrapment to catch terrorists, so be it. We are facing the most dangerous time in history, and our leaders need to respond accordingly. The other side is playing hardball while Canada insists on playing slow pitch. But this has nothing to do with the reality of that case. These were two people who never would have done anything. The entire plot was created by official Canada in order to terrify people here. And a lot of people were scared when they heard that bombs had been planted outside our legislature, which could have gone off and killed a lot of people. This never would have happened. So it's just another part of this creation of fear that is being done to us month after month, year after year. This was a small part of it, but two people have been in jail for years.
You know, Jack, I mean, it's so astonishing that they would put that many resources on this case. We have two impoverished people living in a basement suite in Vancouver with no resources.
And no intention of doing
anything.
anything.
With a history of heroin addiction and psychiatric problems. And, you know, the thing that we were trying to find out, and it's hard to get down to, is how did the police identify them in the first place? And, you know, if you really look at it, from the start, they were set up. Yeah. They were approached and set up.
Another one, we got an email about, could you mention the cell phone warnings? And why aren't the warnings about cell phones on the outside of the package when you buy it? I don't know anything about this, but you said there actually are a lot of warnings, but they're all inside in the small print.
Oh, absolutely. And if you there's a movement worldwide, people trying to get these warnings just placed on the package of the item, of the cell phone.
So what does the warning say?
It says, don't hold this near your body, and you know, it says that it could exceed Federal Communications Commission's exposure limits, which are ridiculously lax, by the way. They're only based upon the principle of heating
So it's
tissue.
kind of like the tobacco warnings, which people had to fight.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people died because of tobacco. And our government and the media were completely involved in making that happen. And now it's the same thing with cell phones. You know, I walked past a couple of kids the other day, and they were having a great time talking to each other. And plus, they were one of them was on a cell phone, and I thought, it's just as if you were smoking a cigarette. You just don't know it because you trust our leadership that this stuff is okay. It's not okay. They don't care. They only want the money. Mount Poly?
Yes, well, there's an article in the paper in the Vancouver Sun yesterday saying that the containment pond that Imperial Mines has put in place to contain some of this toxic sludge that's coming out of their mine, that's now back in operation, it's in peril, and the water may breach even this small containment.
But the mine
pond.
is back in operation.
The mine is back in operation.
Unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean, the people up there are really complaining and asking the Ministry of the Environment to take steps. And, you know, these are the same people that are protecting us from the pollution that's running off the landfill sites in Shawnigan Lake. You know, let's not forget who's taking care of us here.
I just want to say something about the vaccination issue, too. Every few months we get a big push from the media about how important it is to get vaccinated and how bad the anti-vaxxers are, the people who don't believe that we should be forcibly injected with whatever a corporation wants to put into our body. But this is the story the media never tells, that the company that makes the MMR vaccine, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, I think it's GlaxoSmithKline, two of their scientists, plus somebody from the regulatory body, have been in court for more than 3 years. These are two scientists who work for the company. They're suing the company, saying they lied about the studies and tests they did to show the vaccine was more effective than it was, so it could meet the standards and the government would give them hundreds of millions of dollars to buy it. Their own scientists are suing the company, saying they're misrepresenting the truth about the vaccines, and our media will not say that one time while they keep telling us how safe and effective they are.
You know, Pfizer, the makers of Viagra and Botox and all that, just merged with another company, and Pfizer's now going to be head office in Ireland, where they're going to pay 1/3 less taxes. And they merged and they were purchased for $166 billion. That's the size of that company, $166 billion. So, you know, we're talking big pharma. That's not an exaggeration. These are massive corporations.
Walter, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.